we are back. Jerusalem Minute here on JNS TV. My name is Josh Hasten. I am a correspondent for JNS News. Back in studio, Alex Traiman, CEO. He has returned from the United States. Alex, good to see you here across the table.
It's good to be back, and I feel like I got back just in time.
You certainly did. A lot has happened over the course of the past week. The top story, Israel assassinates Hezbollah leader Hassan Nasrallah in a targeted Beirut strike. The terror master Nasrallah was killed on Friday. A target on Hezbollah's headquarters in Beirut. Sources say that he was gathered with a bunch of his terrorist cronies, perhaps even to listen to Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's speech at the UN General Assembly. They got all together. They were vulnerable. Israel took advantage, and this is one of the most unprecedented strikes, I would say, in the history of the state of Israel.
Yeah, and it looks like a change in the war strategy over the past several months here in Israel, particularly with regard to Hamas and Hezbollah, really to go after the senior leadership. It's clear that Israel was aware of the location of Nasrallah. They've been tracking it for months. We see that over the last few weeks with the strikes on the pagers, with the strikes on the walkie-talkie systems, and now with the targeted assassinations of Hezbollah leaders up to and including Nasrallah, that Israel was surveilling everything that Hezbollah has been doing. They knew where he was gathered, and he was with his staff, whoever was remaining of the Hezbollah leadership, and they took the daring decision to strike. We've been trying to kill Nasrallah. Israel's been trying to kill Nasrallah for years. I mean, multiple assassination attempts in 2006, and finally, carrying out a mission that had been planned for several years, actually, to assassinate Nasrallah. And Netanyahu, while in New York, pulled the trigger and said, let's do this, let's do it now. And sure enough, they got Nasrallah.
Nasrallah, by the way, people should note, had the blood of not only Israelis, he had the blood of many Americans, hundreds of Americans, French, and people from all over the Middle East and all over the world. I mean, he was a true butcher, and the world is a better place. A little less evil has been removed from the world today.
And we should talk a little bit about how Israel did it. They dropped over 80 tons of bombs from multiple airplanes on a 4-building complex, of which Nasrallah had his bunker deep underground, more than 60 feet underground. Israel had to bomb the site repeatedly with precision-guided weapons in order to reach that depth, right? The United States, for example, they have ordinances which are much larger, bunker-busting bombs. Israel does not have these types of bunker-busting bombs. We don't have the bunker-busting carrying airplanes to hold such heavy ordinances. We have to use fighter jets. So what you do is, in that kind of situation, is you bomb the same site repeatedly, and they use specific bombs that were actually precision timed to explode after they hit the ground, in order that each bomb, when it hit the spot, would cause a cumulative detonation that would go further and further underneath. So clear that they had planned this out. I think it's also a signal to Iran that's put these nuclear facilities deep underground. Even without bunker buster capabilities, Israel can figure out how to duplicate bunker buster capabilities with fighter jets. They did it here. An amazing strike. They took down the entire complex. And quite frankly, I think that the world is a better place for that.
Absolutely. And let's get to Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, his response to the attack on Nasrallah.
הקם להורגך, השכם להורגו. מדינת ישראל חיסלה אתמול את רב המרצחים חסן נסראללה. סגרנו חשבון עם מי שאחראי לרצח אין ספור ישראלים ואזרחים רבים של מדינות אחרות, כולל מאות אמריקנים ועשרות צרפתים. נסראללה לא היה עוד מחבל, הוא היה המחבל. הוא היה הציר של הציר, המנוע המרכזי של ציר הרשע של איראן.
And certainly sending a signal to the Iranians that the long arm of the state of Israel can reach everywhere. And it's important to note there was celebration taking place. I don't think all people realize there was celebrating taking place in Syria. Nasrallah had massacred hundreds and hundreds of Syrians who opposed the Assad regime during the civil war in that country. There were celebrations. I saw anti-regime Iranians who were celebrating in the streets of different cities in Canada, in London, and I am sure that in Saudi Arabia there were other celebrations as well. In the Sunni world, because they hated Nasrallah and he butchered their people too.
And let's remember that Lebanon and Gaza are not the same situation. In Gaza, Hamas controls the entirety of the Gaza Strip. The Gazan residents overwhelmingly voted for Hamas to be in power, and the population is all Sunni Muslim, and they all voted for Hamas as their governing entity. If there would be another election today in Gaza, they would probably vote for Hamas again. In Lebanon, the situation is different because you have a diverse group of people there. You have about 60% Muslim, which is divided in half. Half are Sunni and half are Shiite, right? The Shiite is Hezbollah. Many of them support Hezbollah, and the Shiites also are Iranian, are Shiites. Sunnis are more Arab. They're more like the rest of the Middle East. So you have a split between the Sunni population and the Shiite population, but you also have about a third of the population in Lebanon is Maronite Christian. They're not fans of Hezbollah, right? Hezbollah has been coming in and been taking over this country that otherwise, if it weren't for Hezbollah being there, it wouldn't be impossible to see some kind of normalization agreement between Lebanon and Israel. And Prime Minister Netanyahu in Israel has said, this is not a war between Israel and Lebanon. This is a war between Israel and Hezbollah. And in many ways, what Israel is doing now in Lebanon, what they might continue to do soon, is actually liberating Lebanon from the control of Hezbollah.
I've seen many of those Christians on social media, especially X or Twitter, celebrating, those Maronite Christians celebrating that their lives, a lot of people are saying, no, Israel's decimating Lebanon. This is much worse for Lebanon. Absolutely not. These people are saying you are freeing Lebanon from the clutches of the evil Hezbollah. And it doesn't stop with the death of Nasrallah, the assassination of Nasrallah. At the same time, Israel, the IDF, the IAF, taking out other key figures in Lebanon. Hamas says its leader in Lebanon was killed in an Israeli strike. So another top terrorist is no longer on this world.
Israel's been taking out as many Hezbollah leaders as they can. They have the whole map. You see the maps of the leadership of Hamas and Hezbollah inside the IDF headquarters. You see a picture of it on the wall. You see which individuals have been taken out. Israel's going after them one by one, and they've made very clear that they are tracking where they are. I mean, there was a great article I read in the New York Post describing exactly how they've been doing it. They said that even Hezbollah fighting for Bashar Assad in Syria opened them up to some different levels of surveillance. They're tracking their phones. They're tracking their wives' cell phones. They're tracking the odometers in their cars. And they know where everybody is, and they're going after them one by one. And what that means, and Netanyahu has said it, he said, we've taken out the top leadership. Then we've taken out their replacements. Then we're taking out the ones who would replace the replacements. So now, as they're talking about who might take over for Nasrallah, that person is not going to be long-lived in their job. It's very clear that Israel is not going to continue to allow any sort of leadership structure at the top of this organization. It's a methodology of breaking the organization from the top down. And it's also a change in the fundamental conception. And there's many conceptions that have been broken since October 7th, all kinds of things that we used to believe that are proving to be absolutely false. For example, one of those was, good fences make good neighbors. Another one was, they care more about their economic well-being and upward mobility than they do about destroying the state of Israel. These things have all been proven false. But another one that's being broken right now is that the devil is better than the devil you don't know. In the past, for the last couple of decades, Israel's they've gathered that it's better to have the leader that in charge than some kind of more extreme leader that might come in after them, because we already know what these people do. We understand their movements and how they'll react. So this concept of the devil is better than the devil you don't know, that concept has now been broken. We're going after the devil because of the devil. And if another devil arrives after them, the idea of saying we're going to take them out too.
You're absolutely right. It started with the Palestinian Authority legitimizing them. And then it went on even to Hamas saying, okay, Hamas is quiet in Gaza. They're minding their own business. So we thought, but all this time they were preparing to carry out the October 7th massacre.
And I think it's also important to note that Israel's not only taking out the leadership. Okay, there was a big worry before this war began that if Hezbollah would unleash their arsenal of weapons, 150 to 200,000 missiles pointed at Israel, many of them long range, some of them precision guided, could carry major payloads, could do immense damage to the home front of the state of Israel. And everybody warned that if you want to have a successful war against Lebanon, you have to preempt. Okay, because if they get started first and you're responding, it could be too late and their long-range weapons could overrun all of our systems. And what we're seeing now simultaneously is that Israel's taking out the top terrorists. When they injured 3,000 of the members with beepers, okay, that's the top levels of command. Now they're going after the upper echelon leadership, the Nasrallah on down, taking out their leadership. But at the same time, Israel has been hitting strategic targets, including launchers, including buildings that Israel knows has long-range weapons. And Israel has degraded Hezbollah's arsenal considerably. That's not to say that they've eliminated it, but Israel's gotten such a tremendous head start. People were just several weeks ago warning of death and destruction. You had the head of the Israeli electric company, coming out and saying, we have to avoid war with Lebanon because Lebanon is going to destroy Israel. We have seen Israel in just a few weeks' time flip this entire equation on its head and done something really that nobody thought was possible.
This just came out just a few minutes ago. You mentioned all the different terror organizations. We took out a lot of Hezbollah operatives, top echelon commanders, Hamas operatives. And now this just reported this morning, Israel took out 3 members of the PFLP, top terrorists there in an airstrike in Beirut as well. So we're hitting that organization. No one is safe from the long arm of Israel. That's the bottom line. Let's turn to Prime Minister Netanyahu's speech at the United Nations General Assembly, their annual meeting several days ago on Friday. And this probably could have been a top story if all the other things didn't happen here. So he focused on many things, and we could probably spend an entire show here talking about just his speech. But I want to break it down basically into 3 categories: Iran, Hezbollah, Nasrallah and Hezbollah, and Saudi Arabia. So number one, Netanyahu said he had a message for the tyrants of Tehran. If you strike us, we will strike you. There is no place in Iran that the long arm of Israel cannot reach, and that is the truth of the entire Middle East. And we're going to get to it in a few minutes, how Israel struck the Houthis once again in Yemen. But the prime minister putting his money where his mouth is and sending a clear message to the Iranians.
Well, it's important to note one of the topics that you think is not one of the top 3, and that's Gaza. And what that signals is that this war is really shifting past the phase of the intensive operation in Gaza. Okay, this has already been almost accomplished. 23 out of 24 battalions destroyed in the Gaza Strip, and Israel focusing now, as you can see, all of its attention on Hezbollah and taking it also now one further, which is to the head of the terror octopus itself, Iran. So they're shifting the attention towards the end game of this war, which never was Gaza to begin with. You start with the smaller terror entity, which is Hamas, because they're close and they've attacked first. You deal with that. You learn how to deal with the terror organization, on the ground. You get the learning, you get the intelligence. Meanwhile, you're preparing for the attack against Hezbollah, gathering intelligence, gathering and creating strategy in southern Lebanon. And now you also see the pathway towards taking this all the way. And you really feel that not only has Israel and the IDF and the Mossad built tremendous momentum compared to when we were doing this show just a month or 2 months ago, where we were questioning, where is this going? You see now where this is going. It's going very clearly. And you also see Netanyahu operating with so much more confidence than he was in previous months. This is the second speech now in just about 2 months' time. He did the first speech in Congress, this speech now at the UN, flying back and forth for both. Both times, there were great arguments for him not going to the States to give this speech to begin with. But you actually see that Netanyahu thrives in this environment, that nobody makes Israel's case to the international community better than Netanyahu. This is Netanyahu on the world stage where he feels very comfortable, very confident, and you're seeing that these speeches have actually motivated him, boosted his status as one of the world's leaders, one of the leaders of the free world today. He's elevated himself to that status through these speeches and through his actions, and I think that he's operating on the highest level right now.
There's no doubt this is his bread and butter, speaking in English at the UN, in Congress. I mean, that's what he does best. And this something stuck out when I was going over the text here, the transcript of his speech. Imagine the Prime Minister of the State of Israel. He's delivering the speech, and he knows literally at this moment that the planes are on their way to Beirut to take out Nasrallah. And he said this, he said, don't let Nasrallah drag Lebanon into the abyss. We are, as you mentioned before, we are not at war with you, the citizens of Lebanon. We're at war with Hezbollah. Israel has every right to remove this threat. Israel has every right to remove this threat. And minutes later, I just got goosebumps right now.
It's
we
clear.
Took out Nasrallah.
It's clear
unbelievable.
That Netanyahu is standing at the podium knowing that this is about to happen. It's not, we don't know yet. I mean, I guess the books will come out later and describe, who was for this attack, who was not for this attack. Netanyahu certainly ordered it. And he just can operate on this high level where he can be carrying out this speech, in front of the entire world, knowing what's going on the other side. And there were some statements in the coming days, in the previous days, that something like this was coming. As Israel was taking out the numbers 2, 3, 4, 5 members of Hezbollah, you had Yoav Gallant saying, we're sending a message to Nasrallah, and if he doesn't get it, he's going to get the message very soon. And sure enough, he got the message.
No, he certainly did. And one last point here from his speech, Saudi Arabia. Netanyahu said numerous times during his speech, we must achieve a historic peace agreement between Israel and Saudi Arabia. The blessing, he referred to it as the blessing a peace agreement would bring, achieving broader peace based on the Abraham Accords and the Abraham Alliance, and also as a foil to Iran's plans to develop nuclear weapons.
I interviewed Netanyahu just days before the election when he retook the premiership in Israel. And I asked him, I said, you've been the prime minister for a long time. What is it that you need to accomplish? Why are you coming back? What's on your agenda? And he said two things. Number one is preventing Iran from crossing the nuclear threshold. Number two is expanding the circle of peace and normalizing relations with Saudi Arabia. And it's clear that he has laid out in those statements a strategy for transforming the Middle East. And we talked about it a few times on the show. It's a strategy. It's very simple to define, very difficult to implement. Number one is you defeat the terrorists, and number two, you normalize with the moderates. And he's going towards both. Now, people are asking whether a deal with Saudi Arabia is going to happen before the election. No. A deal with Saudi Arabia is not going to happen before the election. We're still in the midst of a war. We're not going to normalize now, but you should understand that this war was launched in part because Israel was moving forward toward normalization with Saudi Arabia. This type of normalization, the carrying on of the progressing of the Abraham Accords, this is the end of the Arab-Israeli conflict. You can see the end of decades of conflict coming to fruition. But in order to do that, you have to deal with Iran first. That's what all these countries want. That's what Saudi Arabia wants. That's what the Emirates and Bahrain want. They want Israel to deal with Iran. And until that happens, you're not going to see the Saudi deal, but the Saudi deal is right around the corner. It's going to happen. It's going to come soon. It won't come before the election. What might come before the election is Israel going after Iran. And that's for many different reasons. But certainly Netanyahu understands that there's a vacuum of leadership right now. Israel had a hard time with the American red lights. They're going through every red light. This strike on Nasrallah, the Secretary of Defense, Lloyd Austin,
yeah,
he said, and you had other spokespersons in the State Department, Defense Department say they didn't know about this strike before it happened. Okay, Israel's not telling America what they're going to do anymore. The United States making it very clear, and they're still making it clear, even as we speak, that they think the only solution in Lebanon is a diplomatic solution. They don't want to see a ground operation by the IDF in southern Lebanon, and Israel's they're done with that. And they're saying, we got to win this war. We have all the momentum, and we're not stopping.
Just one last note here on the Netanyahu speech at the UN General Assembly. Who wasn't in the room? Who wasn't there? There's a tweet that came out here. Netanyahu's speech was attended by third-string U.S. diplomats. Blinken and UN Ambassador Linda Thomas Greenfield boycotted the speech. I guess they were speaking to the same sorority Kamala Harris was addressing when she boycotted Netanyahu, referring to the fact that the vice president of the United States was not in the room when Netanyahu addressed the joint House of Congress. So significance of the top U.S. officials not being present for Prime Minister Netanyahu's speech.
Now, on the one hand, you could argue that the UN General Assembly is the time for a lot of shuttle diplomacy. You know, when you have all the leaders of the world in one place at one time, you just have tons of meetings. Netanyahu had many meetings at the UN, some of which were publicized, some of which I'm sure weren't publicized. Of course, if Bibi would have been able to stay longer, he would have had more meetings, but he basically raced back because of the acute military situation. So you could say, well, maybe Blinken and others were having other meetings with Biden and other world leaders, but even not to send the UN ambassador to the speech to support your ally during a war, it's a signal that's been noted. Just to understand, Israel notes who was in the room and they note who wasn't in the room. They understand that Kamala Harris wasn't in the room when Netanyahu delivered a speech to Congress. It was the only time that, as sitting vice president, that she did not preside over joint sessions of the two houses of Congress. And it's also clear that Blinken and Thomas and others, Thomas Greenfield rather, were not in the room when Netanyahu addressed the UN.
So turning to the situation on the ground, as Israel continues on a daily, if not hourly basis, attack terrorist targets in Lebanon, this report came out on Thursday before the assassination of Nasrallah that the Prime Minister Netanyahu pushed back against reports that Israel was about to agree to a ceasefire with Hezbollah. He said the news about a ceasefire is incorrect. There was an American-French proposal signed by a bunch of different countries. The Prime Minister said that that was, in fact, incorrect. Not only is there not a ceasefire, but at the same time, a report that the IDF is preparing at least a limited ground operation right now. Some reports, according to officials, according to ABC, I believe, based on comments by U.S. officials, indicated, and this wasn't verified, indicated that perhaps Israel has, in fact, already crossed over into the Lebanon, Lebanon in certain areas. Not confirmed, but nevertheless, it appears that Israel is moving closer towards a ground operation and further away from this ceasefire proposed.
Yeah,
by
let's
France.
talk about both things here. You know, first we talk about the ceasefire and the diplomatic efforts. So it's been reported multiple times that Israel's Minister of Strategic Affairs, Ron Dermer, who is the former Israeli ambassador to the United States and is known to be one of the closest advisors to Netanyahu. That's why he was placed in this position as Strategic Affairs Minister, has been discussing, negotiating towards some kind of a ceasefire with Antony Blinken, with the French, whoever they're negotiating with on the other side. It's not even clear if there is another side or they're negotiating with. But this is consistent with the Israeli strategy since the war started, which is to always participate in any of these negotiation talks, to be seen as the party that is willing to reach an agreement if their demands are met, but at the same time, not feeling bound by the results of those negotiations. And the reason why they're participating, you could say, you know, why are they even participating at this point? Just can the negotiations and just do what you need to do. As because Israel is constantly trying to make sure that they retain whatever percentage is possible of legitimacy in the eyes of the international community. They always want to be able to tell the leaders of other countries that are pressuring them to stop that, look, we've given the negotiations a chance. We came to the table. We've been having the talks. We're always having the talks. But ultimately, of course, they're dealing with terrorists and you know, negotiating with terrorists doesn't go very far. But at the same time, if they could get to some kind of a solution where Hezbollah would retreat north of the Litani River, if they would agree on some kind of a mechanism, not UN 1701, which did not do this, but some other kind of mechanism to guarantee that Hezbollah doesn't operate below the Litani River. If that ceasefire agreement was linked into also a surrender by Hamas and the release of hostages and an end to the conflict, I believe that Israel would be interested in some kind of negotiated solution that would end the conflict with a Hamas surrender, with a Hezbollah surrender and a retreat, and the release of hostages. So they've been continuing to give that whatever chance of hope it has, but also to be able to tell the rest of the world that we're trying, but if they're not going to play ball, if they're not going to surrender, if they're going to keep fighting, then we're going to keep fighting too. And the question has been, will Israel ultimately go and launch a ground operation in southern Lebanon? Right now, they've been operating from the air. Hezbollah has been able to fire missiles at Israel, and they've done damage. They've done a lot of damage. They fired 8,000 rockets at Israel, some of these anti-tank guided missiles. We've seen the first ballistic missiles that they fired. One struck down outside Ma'ale Adumim just the other night. Mm-hmm. They were firing it, I believe, towards Jerusalem. It didn't make it. But Israel hasn't yet put troops on the ground. And the fear, of course, is that if Israel does put troops on the ground, that they're putting their own troops into danger. So you could ask a question, well, why doesn't Israel just continue doing what it's doing and not put troops into the ground? But we see what happened in Gaza. Putting troops on the ground actually helped the IDF and Israel figure out what's going on inside each one of these buildings. When you bomb buildings from the air, you don't know what's inside that building. I mean, maybe you have intelligence what's inside, but you don't know the extent of what was inside the building you destroyed. When you go inside, you go to door, then you really start to learn what's going on. You gain intelligence, you arrest individuals, the individuals give you back information that you need. And also, Hezbollah has a significant tunnel network. And this has been not very greatly discussed. Everybody knew that Hamas was building this tunnel network in the Gaza Strip. Hezbollah may have a tunnel network that's even more sophisticated than the Gaza tunnel network, and it's even believed that some of these tunnels might cross into Israeli territory. So if you want to make sure that this tunnel network is destroyed and eliminated so that Hezbollah cannot carry out an October 7th style attack on Israel, you have to go in on the ground. And when you talk about that pager incident, it's again, we'll find out in the books being written later, but some of the reports said that they believed that Hezbollah was getting prepared for an October 7th style attack, and that is why they carried out the pager attack when they did, to prevent that type of incursion. So I do believe that the IDF is going to have to go in a limited ground operation to push Hezbollah back above the Litani, north of the Litani River. Now, the difference between these two operations, now that you've taken out Nasrallah, now that you've taken out a lot of the rocket launchers and the long-range missiles, and when we talk about the demographics in Lebanon, you may get to a situation where the civilian population is going to understand that this war is going to be over very fast, and they're going to move out of the way. And I think that does give the IDF a very significant advantage over what happened in Gaza, to go in on the ground, go in fast, meet their objectives, and get out of there.
So as all this is going on, you would think that would be enough, right? But no, the Houthis want a piece of the action as well. The Prime Minister cuts his trip short after the assassination of Nasrallah, comes back to Israel. And what is here to greet him? The Houthis, they try to fire, they do fire a ballistic missile, perhaps aimed at Netanyahu's plane as it lands on the tarmac at Ben Gurion International Airport. Reported here, surface-to-surface ballistic missile launched at central Israel from Yemen Saturday evening was shot down by air defenses outside the country's border, according to an IDF statement. But it is believed that they were actually trying to fire at Prime Minister Netanyahu. And what happened last night? What did we see?
Well, 1 second. I felt that. I felt the interception. It was just after 1 a.m. on Saturday night. We heard a big rumble. It was like, and I was wondering what that was. Go out to social media. Sure enough, in the minutes after I felt that rumble, whatever that was, it felt like some kind of explosion. Reported that this was intercepted. Now, it says here that it was shot down by air defenses outside the country's borders. Okay, again, I felt in Jerusalem, I felt the interception myself. They said that it was intercepted somewhere around the Tel Aviv area, and a major fragment of that missile landed by Tzor Adasa, which is not far from where you live and not that far from Jerusalem.
So you're not buying it.
So I think that this missile got pretty close. Because I don't see how a fragment of the missile would land in the middle of the country.
Right.
If this thing was intercepted far away, it wasn't intercepted far away, which is the same thing that we saw on Saturday night, April 13th, when Iran sent those ballistic missiles, 300 ballistic missiles, cruise missiles, drones towards Israel. We were watching the fireworks off of our porch. These things were intercepted dangerously close. Okay.
So why did they say that then?
I don't know why they said it.
Why did they do that?
I don't know why they said that, but why that's what's being reported. How do you define the country's borders? Is there like an altitude? I mean, the way it works with a ballistic missile is that they're shot up high up into the atmosphere, and then they come down at the speed of gravity, even faster than the speed of gravity, I think. I'm not a physicist. I don't know. But that's how they get there so fast, is because they just shoot them all the way up into the atmosphere, and then they come straight down. So as they're coming down, there's multiple levels of the Israeli air defense. And some of those weapons on April 13th, they were missed by the first level and they were missed by the second level, but they were intercepted by the last level. It seems here also that this missile got dangerously close, and it represented an escalation that was unacceptable to Israel and the IDF. And that is why, as you're about to report.
Absolutely. Just a day later, yesterday, Sunday, dozens of IAF planes struck several Houthi military targets, including key ports in Yemen, in response to the missiles a day before. You're talking about planes which are traveling 1,800 kilometers away from Israel. This is the second time, if I'm not mistaken, since the start of the war on October the 7th, that Israel has made it very, very clear that the IDF is determined to continue operating at any distance, near or far, against all threats to the citizens of the state of Israel. That's an IDF quote there.
These attacks are using many planes, including refueling planes, because the jets have to be refueled on the way back if they go that far. So it's very interesting, because it's the second time that they've carried out these types of attacks deep, far away from Israeli territory, and used refueling to get back. And this is about as far away as Tehran, by the way. So this sends a signal to the Iranians. These two attacks, both the bunker busting attack in Beirut against Nasrallah, and this attack that Israel can attack far away. The long arm of the law from Israel can go very far. It can reach Tehran, and also that they can strike deep underground. Also that attack in Syria, where they hit this underground weapons facility where Israel actually dropped in paratroopers to go foil this underground facility. So Israel is showing they can reach far. They can take out targets deep underground through various methods. And it's important to note that what also was struck, these were strategic targets in Yemen. They didn't go after the leadership, but they went again after the oil refineries of Yemen, which is their only source of income. And they destroyed two separate ports near Hodeidah and one just north of Hodeidah. That this is what the Houthi Navy has been using, both to get the weapons in from Iran. They're being shipped in. So we took out the ports, and also, they have these small ships which they've been using to terrorize the international shipping lanes and to take ships hostage. Really the United States and others should have been, seen this as casus belli for war, because when the Houthis interrupt international shipping, they're not doing it. Nobody's doing that job. So Israel's saying, we'll do it ourselves. And they're taking out the ports. And we just saw massive, massive explosions in Yemen. And this is the second time they did it. The first time they did it, they said that the oil refineries were burning for a week. Okay, nobody could put out the fires that were so big. And here you saw massive explosions. Israel definitely hitting Yemen where it hurts. Let's see if the Houthis get the message that it's time to stop. If not, I think you're going to see more attacks in Yemen in the weeks ahead.
The Houthis not only striking Israel, but just the other day on Friday, the Houthis attacking U.S. warships with 24 missiles in the Red Sea without a response. And Senator Roger Wicker said that this is from Friday, today's Iranian-backed terrorist attack against American Navy ships is nothing less than an act of war. The Biden-Harris administration's month-long effort to play defense, in quotes, in the Red Sea has completely failed. It is time to act decisively to punish the Houthis and let the world see the consequences of attacking the United States. So here you have Israel, tiny Israel. They're certainly showing the world what happens when the Houthis strike. They sent a clear message for a second time. And as you said, yesterday's attack was even bigger than the first one. Yet you have members of the U.S. Senate here complaining that the American administration is not doing enough or anything really to deter the Houthis to continue attacking their Navy ships, which are located there in the Red Sea.
And this is Israel providing leadership in the region where nobody else is willing to provide leadership. And believe me that the other nations in the region, including the Saudis, including the Emiratis, including Bahrain. They understand who is taking care of business in the region and who isn't. And I think right now, I mean, and this war's not over, and we don't know where it's going to go. And I think that there could be very difficult days ahead for the state of Israel. Like, even though we have tremendous momentum right now, the war is not easy. It's dangerous, and the other side, they have a lot of weaponry, and they've been planning to attack Israel for a long time. They can do a lot of damage. Meanwhile, Israel has the momentum, but Israel is establishing itself as the military superpower in the Middle East right now, and they're providing tremendous leadership on the world stage. When Netanyahu went to the UN, he was presenting himself as one of the leaders of the free world. Everybody sees that right now. Moral leadership, military strength, the willingness to reestablish order in what's been a dangerous region for way too long, because Iran and its terror proxies have been able to develop all these capabilities and destabilize the entire Middle East. Israel saying, no more, it's over.
At the same time, Prime Minister Netanyahu's coalition just became more stable, talking about politics here on a local level, but this will impact the war as we proceed forward. Reported by JNS New Hope Party leader Gideon Sa'ar will re-enter the Israeli government, led by Prime Minister Netanyahu. The two announced in a joint press statement on Sunday night. There was bad blood between the two, and it looks like, from what I saw last night on TV, a press conference, that they are both willing to let bygones be bygones, do what's best for the nation, ensure Netanyahu has even more of a stable coalition moving forward. Sa'ar will join as a member of the security cabinet. And again, more stability for the Israeli government. I think that's another positive sign as we move forward during this war.
Well, Sa'ar was previously the number 2 in the Likud. He was a longtime member of the Likud party. He actually challenged Netanyahu for the leadership of Likud during that consecutive series of elections. Netanyahu beat him by a vote of 75 to 25% in the primary, and Sa'ar, didn't take the loss lightly, and he decided to leave the Likud and to start a new party. The party didn't do that well, and then he wound up joining forces with Benny Gantz. Now, you remember Benny Gantz joined the government in the beginning of the war, and then somewhat foolishly pulled out right in the middle. Sa'ar then separated from Gantz. Sa'ar has 4 Knesset members with his faction, the New Hope faction, and now, and most of them, by the way, were former members of the Likud party. So they belong with the Likud. They belong with the right wing, and now they have reunited for the time being with their previous political home. They've come back to the right, and what you're actually seeing is that with this formation, you're seeing a true picture of the Israeli electoral map, which is 68 out of 120 seats in the Knesset belong to the right. This is a very, very strong right-wing government that you have. It used to be a narrow right-wing government with 63 seats, 64 seats, depending on whether you think Gallant has votes with the government, because sometimes Gallant doesn't vote with the government. But people were arguing that this is a narrow government of 64 to the right, which is, it was already more stable than the left-wing government that Naftali Bennett and Yair Lapid formed with only 61 seats. But now you have 68 seats. It's a very strong right-wing government. Netanyahu has just demonstrated to the Israeli populace and to the international community that this is the government that the people voted for overwhelmingly. He's reunited the right. I think it's a big step. Now, Israel could have continued doing the war if this didn't happen. But I think that this strengthens Netanyahu. It shows that Netanyahu is in control, not only of the military, not only of the diplomatic, but also in terms of the political, right? He's done all 3 things just in the matter of a few weeks, really stepping up the military war, taking out Nasrallah and hitting Hezbollah where it hurts, hitting Yemen, winning on all fronts in the military, going against the UN just after a speech to Congress, showing he's the diplomatic master, and now demonstrating once again that he's the political master of the Israeli scene, strengthening his government. And I think that sets the stage now if Israel will in fact, take this war on the ground into Lebanon, and potentially to take this war all the way to the head of the octopus, which is Iran. Now Israel has a much stronger government in place, and that takes away the ability of any one of the ministers or members of the current government to destabilize the government. So I think maybe in the scheme of things looks small, but I think it was an important political move by Netanyahu, and good to see the right wing strengthened and reunited. And we all need to be reunited in this time.
Yeah, absolutely. Certainly victory through unity. We've talked about Gaza. We've talked about Lebanon, the Houthis, Iran, and of course, Iraq doesn't want to be left out of what's going on here. A drone strike on a lot wounds 2. Magen David Adom response said that its medics on the scene treated 2 male victims in a missile attack on a lot just several days ago.
Yeah, Netanyahu. I mean, again, people have to remember this. Netanyahu's called this a 7-front war.
Right.
You have Hamas, you have Hezbollah, you have the Houthis in Yemen. You have Iran itself attacking. We've been attacked from Syria. We're being attacked inside Israel and Judea and Samaria. And we're even been attacked by Iraq. So it's been attacked on 7 different fronts. So anybody, and we said this before too, anybody that has tried to characterize this as some sort of extension of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, right? An intractable conflict. This has nothing to do with that. Okay, maybe that's too far. It has something to do with that for sure, but it's not only that.
Yeah, the same haters who said that Israel couldn't achieve peace with Bahrain, the UAE, the Abraham Accords, they're the ones who said it all has to do with the Israeli so-called Palestinian conflict, and that's absolutely not the case.
This has to do with Iran and all of its terror proxies. Iran has destabilized Iraq. They've destabilized Syria. They've destabilized Lebanon, they've destabilized Yemen, they destabilized Gaza. They're trying to destabilize Jordan and the areas that are controlled by the Palestinian Authority and what's known as the West Bank, what we call Judea and Samaria. They are, and this is what Netanyahu talked about, the blessing and the curse. And he put up that map. He showed the blessing, which is, from India, Saudi Arabia, trade, railways, fiber optic cables, bringing the region deep into the 21st century, or the curse. And this shows the destabilization here. And Israel may be attacking in Iraq before this is over, because clearly the United States is not doing that. To the opposite. The
U.S. to end its military mission to defeat ISIS in Iraq. I'm a little bit confused by the story. According to this report, a statement by, I think it was the Secretary of State in the U.S., the U.S. is concluding the coalition's military mission in Iraq over the next 12 months and no later than the end of September 2025. Again, the U.S. is saying that's it, we're done. ISIS has been defeated. I mean, has ISIS really been defeated in Iraq? Why is the U.S. stopping this mission at this juncture? I mean, I'm a little bit unclear about the situation here, honestly.
Again, what happens when the United States pulls out of a place like Iraq, that creates a vacuum. And if the United States is not there to prevent terrorism from forming, that vacuum is going to be filled by Iran. I heard former President Trump say this, a few weeks ago when I was at the Israeli-American Council. He talked about how Iraq is basically a proxy state at this point of Iran. And this is just an American retreat during a war, right? This is a time where Iraq is actively attacking against the state of Israel, where Iranian-backed Revolutionary Guards and others have attacked U.S. interests in Iraq. And you're seeing now that the United States is announcing that they're going to pull out of Iraq as a result of these attacks. It's not like they're leaving because, mission accomplished. It's been peaceful here. We're just twiddling our thumbs and not doing anything for the last few years, and we don't need to be here anymore. Everything's fine. That's not the case. They've been attacked, and it's after these attacks, the U.S. response to these attacks is to announce that they're pulling out. That's going to create a further vacuum, and that's why I think that the situation there could actually lead to Israel acting inside Iraq as well.
We saw what happened in Afghanistan just several years ago. Iraq could be next. We're nearly out of time. Just one last story here, which is relevant in regard to what's going on in the U.S. A headline is U.S. delaying more arms to Israel. Senators Tom Cotton and Mitch McConnell wrote to U.S. President Joe Biden last week, alleging that his administration is withholding additional arms to Israel. Senators wrote they have reason to believe that the administration is also pausing delivery of Apache helicopters and tractors to the Jewish state. Let's take a look at Tom Cotton speaking to Jake Tapper.
Israel has every right to defend itself and to go on offense against a terrorist organization in Lebanon, and we need to give them the tools to defeat both Hamas in the south and Hezbollah in the north and defend their own people.
Is the United States not giving tools that Israel needs?
No. First off, they're not giving them the political and diplomatic support that they needed from the very beginning. If rather than trying to put constant pressure on Israel, more pressure than we put on Iran and its terrorist networks, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris had simply adopted a policy to let Israel win and back them to the hilt, the war in Hamas probably would have ended a long time ago. Earlier this year, there was a de facto partial arms embargo on Israel, not just the 2,000-pound bombs, which they do need to hit Hamas in its deep and buried tunnels, but mortar rounds and artillery shells and small arms ammunition. Now they even have a tractor embargo in Israel.
So again, we've been told since October the 7th, Israel should be striking pinpointed. It should be quick. It should be fast. We should take care of business. Yet we can't do that unless we get the arms that we need. And now, according to Senators Cotton and McConnell, the U.S. is still not supplying the weapons Israel needs in order to finish these wars.
Now, the United States said early on that, the only shipment of weapons that they were so walking was these 2,000-pound bombs,
right,
because they didn't want Israel to use them in Gaza. Now, Israel could have committed not to use those 2,000-pound bombs in Gaza. They could have made an agreement. Okay, we don't need to use them there. But you saw the attack that we just did against Nasrallah deep in Beirut, where we had to use 80 tons of bombs in order to get to that underground bunker. You need these heavy weapons in order to be able to do that. You see that the enemy is putting themselves deep underground. If you want the war to end, you have to take out the leaders. Hamas has underground infrastructure. Hezbollah has underground infrastructure. Iran has made underground infrastructure in Syria, and all their nuclear infrastructure is deep underground. The heavy bombs are what you need in order to carry out attacks on this underground infrastructure. So the United States basically saying to Israel, we don't want you to be able to take out all this underground infrastructure because we don't support your mission, your goal of winning the war, of actually defeating the enemies. And it's interesting that we talked just a minute ago about the U.S. ending the mission in Iraq, because remember, it wasn't too long ago that the United States ended the mission in Afghanistan, leaving billions of dollars worth of weapons. And perhaps if the United States, if Israel wants to get U.S. weapons, maybe they should just buy it from the Taliban, because apparently they have a bunch.
They certainly do. And that is all the time we have for today. I mean, this was a jam-packed edition of Jerusalem Minute. So much going on in the news. Thanks for joining us here in Jerusalem. My name is Josh Hasten, correspondent for JNS, with Alex Traiman, who's back in the country, a CEO of JNS. Shout out to Ryan Lifshitz for everything he does behind the scenes here at JNS. Make sure you check out all of the amazing content on JNS TV, and also go to jns.org for all of the latest breaking news. Folks, it's happening very fast. Actually, I heard so many buzzes from my phone. I'll have to check my phone now. Perhaps more rockets being fired from Lebanon. We'll check that out. Thanks so much for joining us. Continue to pray for the well-being of the brave men and women of the IDF as they continue this mission on 7 fronts.
And
Alex has one last thing.
Important to wish everybody a very happy and a healthy and a sweet Jewish New Year.
Yes, Rosh Hashanah this Wednesday night, Thursday, and Friday as we commemorate the Jewish New Year. To all those who are celebrating, Shana Tova Umetuka, as we say, have a happy, sweet New Year. Should be one of health, happiness, and peace, and only good things. Don't forget to check us out next week on Jerusalem Minute. Have a great week, everybody.